And when some of us in the social justice sector ask the leaders, do you have a plan around reduction in poverty and elimination of poverty, what did they say? I will not name them, but I think you will know what they said. One of them said, I don't want to make promises I cannot keep. Oh, that really inspires faith in me. I'm definitely voting for you. You're so honest, you just don't want to make any of the promises that you cannot keep because you don't intend to keep them. The second leader said, when I get elected, I'll come up with a plan. Oh, that really inspires me. And the third leader said, every time I meet a poor person, I cry. I'm like, thank you so much. That was really heartening. So between the three political parties, we actually had three different responses that inspired such faith in me that I had to literally drag myself to the local school to vote. And when I was standing there, literally I could close my eyes and say, "Eeny, meeny, miny, moe," and I could have ended up with Green Party, with Martians. It wouldn't have mattered because nobody had a plan about reducing poverty other than crying and elect me and maybe I'll do something. But tell me, don't you think that racialization of poverty and poverty generally would have been a factor, would have been a political agenda that all of us could have bought into? Even the most die-hard capitalists would have been hard-pressed to say, let's not eliminate poverty. But no, we chose religious-based funding for religious-based schools. That's the last thing I want to say, although it's really wonderful. Nobody stops me, nobody gives me time limits. The last thing I want to tell you is my pet peeve, which is that please do not take your civil liberties for granted. Canada is a beautiful country. We have a long and illustrious history of racial profiling. Aboriginal people, Jewish people, Ukrainian people, Black people, South Asian people, Chinese people, Japanese people, and now the new kid on the block, Muslim people. We have a wonderful and long history of racial profiling. And of course, we do it always to help those poor buggers, right? Do not take your civil liberties for granted. Do not sit on your laurels and say, in Canada, because we have a Charter of Rights, we are okay. Charter of Rights is a piece of paper. That's all it is. If you do not exercise your rights, if you do not exercise your voice to show dissent, to make a better place, with a conscious agenda to make a better place, Charter of Rights is just a piece of paper. That's all it is. It means nothing to anybody. The new language that we have, think about it. How is social inclusion being created? When the election time came, what was the big debate before the religious-based schools? Whether you can vote with your face covered or not. Oh wow, yeah, I remember seeing hordes and hordes of Muslim women standing outside electoral offices with their faces covered, dying to vote. That was such a national crisis. We had to have a discussion on it. Our illustrious Prime Minister even had to make a pronouncement, even though it was illegal, he had to make a pronouncement. Ask them for their ID cards. Get females to look at them, but you've got to see their faces. Now, I know we are pretty, but you don't need to see my face. Because if I'm an absentee voter, if I'm an overseas voter, you don't get to see my face. And quite frankly, even if you saw it, you wouldn't remember. Because we all look the same. So quite frankly, we had a political conundrum, a crisis of sorts, where the election commissioner had to actually get up and state the obvious, which is, our law doesn't require face. But we chose to have this discussion, nevertheless. And you talk about civil liberties? To my mind, the very fact that we can have a public discourse about a phantom, a total fabrication and a phantom issue talk to the police, for instance, they say, well, you know, Muslims and black people, they commit too many crimes, and you know, some are terrorists and some are just criminals, and so, you know, we have to be very vigilant. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to over-police Muslims and blacks, of course you're bound to find something that goes wrong. But this is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about civil liberties. Do not take your civil liberties for granted. Your civil liberties need to be fought for. You need to be extremely vigilant. Don't get carried away that the huddled masses are outside my door and I've got ISAF funding, so I've got to provide them services. So I'm too busy looking after my board of directors to worry about the fact that the society sucks. Don't get carried away by that. Because you don't want to be a band-aid solution to people's pain, which is what we will become exceedingly if we don't have a political agenda to bring about concrete shift in public discourse, in public policy, and in structures of society.